Okay, guys, so we are now live. So welcome to the attendees. We had 115 participants as observer for this webinar today. Welcome for this pitching webinar in the context of the GLF youth program. And we warmly welcome our panelists, Dr. Andy Jarvis, Juliet Braslow, and Abby Wardoff. So before they introduce themselves and lead you through this exciting webinar, I would just like to give you some technical tips. So I will share my screen now. Apologies if you see some weird infinity screen. Let me go there. And so what you need to know is by going to this icon on the left side of your screen called Webinars on Air, it opens a chat rubric on the right side of your screen. I hope all of you see that. So you can type your comments here, or you can also start a poll or raise Q&A sessions, raise questions. You can also raise your hands if you want to say something. You can see already 3 people raised their hands here. And also do know that we can add you as a panelist if you have a pitching to do. Just know that you may have some 30 seconds delay between the time you actually take part as a panelist or before you go out from the panel and become back an observer. So be patient. I will stop the sharing of my screen and I will give the floor to our panelists. Abby, if you want to start perhaps.
Sure. So hi. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us today. So this is the pitching webinar. It's part of the Global Landscapes Forum, a series of master classes and webinars. So this webinar is the introduction to a master class that we will give in Peru during the Global Landscapes Forum in December. So we hope that this webinar will provide a foundation in the basics of pitching and will provide you with some basic tips for crafting a pitch. And in December, we'll be able to practice them with the attendees in Lima, Peru. So we invite everyone who's here today with us, if you are in Lima, to join us for the masterclass. So a little bit about myself. I work in communications for the CGIAR research program on water, land, and ecosystems. I'm based in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, so I'm calling from Addis right now. And I've given a pitching training once before in Nairobi on pitching for policymakers. So I'm excited to work with Andy and with Juliet and adapt this to a wider audience today. I do want to just reiterate that at certain points we will ask for your feedback. So please, if you scroll to the chat section on the right side of your screen, please feel free to ask questions in this chat box throughout the webinar, and we'll be able to address your questions at certain times. At some point, we will also ask for volunteers to give a pitch, and at that time, we will add you in so that you can speak verbally to the rest of the webinar. So I'll let Juliet and Andy introduce themselves now.
All right, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining. And I am the coordinator for the Soils Research Area at the International Center for Tropical Agriculture, CIAT, and I'm based in Nairobi, Kenya, so that's where I'm calling in from today. And I participated in the pitching session to policymakers that Abby just mentioned by giving a pitch. And I also ran a similar session in Colombia for CIAT staff a few months ago. And I'm interested in effective science communication, so I'm excited to participate today.
Okay. Thanks, Juliet. So I'm Andy Jarvis. I'm the Research Area Director for the International Center for Tropical Agriculture, like the same place as Juliet. But I'm based here in Cali, in Colombia. and I also have a role working for the CCAFs, the Climate Change, Agriculture, and Food Security Research Program of the CGIAR, leading all the work on climate smart agriculture. And so I think I'm here because I'd actually, I don't know much about the theory of pitching, but I've been told I'm quite a good pitcher. So, I just hope they haven't got it mixed up with baseball, right? I'm not very good at baseball.
Great. Okay. Thanks, Andy. So the format of the webinar is we'll go through a couple of exercises, and please, again, ask questions at any point. So, Andy, why don't you go ahead and start with your pitch and a couple of tips.
Okay. So, I mean, I think the idea with this webinar is I'm going to, from a kind of purely empirical point of view, kind of give you a few kind of ideas of how I see pitching, and then give you an example, and then we can use that example to pull it apart and understand what's going on, right? So I mean, the first thing is the need for pitching, right? You have countless times and moments through your career and through your day, through your daily life, when you need to persuade someone of something, right? And you don't have an hour to tell them the full story. You normally have a few seconds, at best 2-3 minutes, right? So you know, it's very important that you have, for the things that really matter, where you need to persuade someone of something, that you have it very clear in your mind, really, how, you know, what is the essence of this, and how can you transmit it to someone and get them on board, convince them of something you're passionate about. So the first thing is, you know, I think every day you're pitching, and you don't actually, maybe you don't realize it, but every day what you're doing in your daily life is persuading people of things you believe in, or want to do, or want to achieve, right? So, you know, I mean, I can give you the most ridiculous example of, you're going out for dinner tonight. You want to eat pizza, and your friend wants to eat Chinese. You have a limited little bit of time to convince your friend that pizza is way better than Chinese right now. And so, you know, you're constantly in real life experiencing these kinds of things, and you're constantly pitching, right? So I suppose, you know, this is about kind of pitching in a work context, in a context of on the kind of the professional side of things. But I would also, you know, think all the time about what you're doing in life and how you're convincing people of things that you want and you want to do. And so, you know, you're all expert pitchers, essentially. So and the other thing is, you're all victims of a pitch, right? So you're all being victimized as well, right? So everyone is pitching at you as well. So if you go out tonight and you end up eating pizza, well, you've been the victim of a pitch, because someone else has convinced you of what they wanted, right? So, and I would just say that you're all victims right now, because you've been persuaded to take part in this webinar, right? So you know, so you had a limit. I don't know what it was, whether it was an email or you saw it online. You probably spent 1 minute looking at it, and in that 1 minute, you were convinced to take part in this. So you are also victims right now. And I'd just like to say that the best pitches in the world are the ones that you actually then regret, right? So when you've been pitched at, and it was actually such a bad idea, but nevertheless the pitch was so good that you ended up doing it, those are the best pitches, because really it's easy to sell a good idea. It's hard to pitch a bad idea, right? So I just hope that the pitch on this webinar doesn't become one of those cases that you end up regretting, right? So that's the kind of the background, I think, on pitching. Just go out there, you know, spend the rest of your day or the weekend conscious of the fact that essentially it's happening all the time at you, and you're doing it to other people, right? So you can actually learn a huge amount just by reflecting on what's happening in everyday life. So onto the kind of my empirical ideas of what pitching is about, some of the key issues. So I would say, you know, number one, you got to understand your audience, right? So who are you actually talking to? You know, who are they? What do they want? And what is their perspective? You know, put yourself in their shoes, and what are they in this moment in time thinking about, right? And so, you know, that's absolutely crucial. But then, you know, that's the other side. You also have to have total clarity on what do you want, right? So what is your objective? What are you looking to achieve? So to go back to the example of pizza or Chinese, well, the clarity on the ask, I want pizza. The understanding the audience, the other person is wanting Chinese, but maybe they're hungry, or maybe they haven't eaten Chinese for pizza for a few days, So you've got to understand, also from their perspective to be able to convince them, right? The third thing that I would say is realistic appraisal of what you can meaningfully achieve in this particular pitch, right? So you might have an end game, you might have a long-term strategy and an objective that you want to achieve, but maybe in this pitch you just want to get to the next step, right? So maybe the next step is just convincing them of having a meeting, and so have a realistic kind of appraisal of what you can achieve in this particular pitch, right? So don't necessarily go off and try and get everything in one go. You can really only ever ask for one thing, and so figure out what that next step is that you need. Fourth thing I would say is play to personal biases, right? So if it's one person, it's easy. If you have 5 people, each of those audience members, each of those people that are listening to you come from different perspectives, right? So talk to each specific key audience member and give them real-world examples, again, playing to exactly what's on their mind right at that very moment. And then the fifth one I would say is simplification of the message. So this is probably, I would say, the error that 90% of people make. This is the classic error, outsmarting yourself, right? You don't need, in a pitch, to convince people of how smart you are. You don't need to tell them everything that you know. You just need to keep the message simple. So don't confuse it with multiple irrelevant pieces. So, again, have total clarity in what you want. It's all right to be smart, but don't outsmart yourself. Don't try and kind of oversell yourself. It's about the ask. That's what it's about, right? And then the next one I would say is, this is a tricky one to find the balance on, but use numbers and specifics very strategically. So I think numbers are great. When you throw a number in, often it gives people an impression that you know what you're talking about. When you know a number, when it's very generic and things, then people start doubting. But really, does he know this? I would use numbers but use them strategically. If you use too many, you've lost the audience as well. They lose the train of thought. They lose themselves in so many numbers. So it's very important to use this, but don't go into excessive detail. And then the final one is be confident but not cocky, right? No one likes someone who's cocky, but confidence is absolutely crucial. And I'd say there's nothing wrong with a good joke. A good joke gets you a long way. That's got, at least I think that's been my secret of my career, is I always try and find a good joke just to get going. So those are my empirical perspectives on kind of learning of a few successes and lots of failures in pitching, right? So it's not something that everyone can do immediately. It's not. It's something, you could go to the most successful people in the world, go to Mark Zuckerberg, and I bet you he can tell you some appalling pitches that he made and some fantastic failures. So everyone fails, and the key is reflecting and learning from it and doing it better, right? So that's kind of my little background on pitching. So now I think the idea is that what I'll do is I'll give you an example pitch, and then Juliet is going to critique it and pick it apart and kind of essentially explain what I am trying to do with my pitch. Okay, so I'll give you an example of actually something that I did 2 days ago, and this was a real pitch that I did. I was talking to 3 people. I had 2 people from the Ministry of Agriculture of Colombia, and I had 1 person from the rice producer organization in Colombia, the trade federation, quite a high-profile guy from the rice sector of Colombia. The theme, well, I was talking about agroclimatic forecasts in Colombia, and what I was essentially asking is for investment. It's continuation of an investment that the Ministry of Agriculture is making. So I want $2 million from these guys, right? So here you go. This is the pitch. So this is what I said to them. All right. So every year you lose 98 million US dollars on crop losses at the hands of climate variability. So for the past 2 years, we've been working on ways to avoid this for you. Our approach with agroclimatic forecasts has shown the way. These permit the agricultural sector to move away from firefighting, which has a large cost of public funds, and eats into the profit margins of farmers, and move into a prevention-based system. So we've already shown in Cordoba how 170 farmers saved $3.8 million of inputs thanks to our agroclimatic forecasts. So in 2015, we want to outscale this to national level, and for that we need your help. We ask that the ministry renew the agreement for CIAP to support the agricultural sector in adapting to climate variability, and ask for the continuation of the very positive collaboration that we've had with Feria Arroz in providing our recommendations to your rice growers. With just $2 million of investment, we can save you $300 million US of crop losses over the next 10 years. So that's the pitch. Now over to you, Juliet.
All right, thanks, Andy. So what I'm going to do is, like Andy said, deconstruct the pitch a little, but I'm going to follow the 4 top key items I think that are most important to keep in mind when pitching. So I'm going to go through this sort of like a lesson of these top key items, and sprinkled with examples from Andy's pitch. So the first one, and some of them are going to be reiterating what Andy said, which is great because these are important. From his experience and my experience, we think these are really important issues. So one is knowing your audience. You have to do a little research. If you don't already know them, you have to do a little research beforehand and have an understanding of who you're actually talking to. So Andy definitely knew who was in the room and how he was going to play to their biases, to what they were going to be interested in. So you want to know, what have they supported in the past? What organizations are they affiliated? What are they really going to care about? And how can you appeal to their cause? So Andy was talking about agroclimatic forecasts and permitting the agriculture sector to move away from firefighting. So he knew he was talking to someone who knew exactly what this meant, and it has large cost of public funds. He knew that this minister is now having to pay out compensation to farmers right now for this very reason. So it's something sitting on his desk, something that's definitely going to grab his attention if it can save this money and help solve this specific problem. So some elements of your pitch will appeal to different audiences. So we had 3 different people in the room. So thinking about who in the room, or who you're standing in front of talking to, is going to be interested in which parts of what you have to say and how you play to that. So they also have to be able to place your recommendation in some kind of context that makes sense for their job and what they do. So that's exactly what Andy did. He said we want to move away from something that costs a lot of money, and he mentioned the farmers. So he had someone representing farmers in the room saying this eats at the profits that farmers really care about. So they're interested. He has the minister interested. He has the farmers interested. He knows who his audience is. So this is a great example. And also, you want to know what kind of numbers your audience is interested in. Like Andy said, you want to use numbers strategically. You don't want to overwhelm people with numbers. You want to have them be specific and meaningful for those specific audience members. So he said, every year you lose 98 million US dollars in crop losses at the hand of climate variability. So that's something that's going to get these people's attention, the people who are in the room. So something that has economic value or talking about annual costs, those are numbers that people can grab onto and will be meaningful for them. And then something else about numbers that can be an interesting interesting trick to weave in, which Andy also did, is tell them how much your project how much it will cost if you don't take action. If you don't take the action I'm suggesting, this is what it might cost you. So that's something that he said, 98 million US dollars per year, and he was in the end talking about over 10 years. So if you add that up, then someone in the audience can be thinking, all right, this is how much it's going to cost me if I don't take this action. So these are strategic ways to use numbers based on the research you've done and the way that you know your audience. And something else about knowing your audience is sometimes being a bit flexible about who your audience might be. You may not always have a meeting set up. Like Andy said, we're pitching daily as we go through our lives. So if you have an idea of what your key messages are, what you really want, what you would like people to do or convince people to do, and maybe a sense of who your audience might be. So if you're going to a conference, let's say you're going to the COP20, you have a sense of who you might run into. Do a little research on them, so then you have your message prepared, some sense of who your audience is, and you can put the two together and come out with a good pitch, even if it's just talking to them at a coffee break or a refreshment break. And you can tailor these pitches to the audience when the opportunities arise. And then one other thing about knowing your audience is knowing what kind of language they're going to be comfortable with and going to understand. So you want to avoid using jargon, avoid using acronyms that are confusing. You don't want to confuse people with your pitch. You have a short time. You want to make sure they completely understand what you're saying. So one thing I would say about Andy's pitch is he used the term agroclimatic forecasting, and not everyone would know what that means or what he's doing. What does that mean? What's going on? So this group of people he was talking to, he'd already had some interaction with on this subject, so they likely knew what he was talking about. But to be safe, it's always great to give a short key explanation if you have any kind of terminology or anything that might be a little confusing to someone in the audience. You can't assume everybody knows. So another example in one of the pitching sessions that we had before is that someone was talking about hunger. And with hunger, you can think of hunger in multiple different ways. So someone might be thinking, oh man, I can't wait for the coffee break, I'm really hungry. And someone else is thinking about hunger, malnutrition and a different sense of hunger. So being clear about what you mean, even by the simple words that you use, is something to keep in mind. So that's the first point, knowing your audience. Multiple elements to that. But Andy showed that he did know his audience and used specific numbers and ways to draw them in, get their attention, things that they would be interested in. So number 2 of the 4 is knowing your ask. And this also Andy talked about. You want to know what you're asking someone to do. What would you like them to do? What action do you want them to take? It has to be something that they feel like they can do as well. Something clear. And it may be a step towards what the outcome is that you're looking for as well. So I also made a pitch in this session that Abby was talking about with a great story, and I took the audience along with me. They were nodding their heads. It was great. And then I got to what am I asking them to do? And it's really hard if you don't have a very specific thing, the one thing you really want them to do. So Andy was very clear. He said, I want you to renew your agreement to support CIAT and give us $2 million to outscale forecasts. And he said he'll save money as well and crop losses. So he said exactly what he wanted and why. And another reason, a way to sort of bolster what you're asking people to do is, in addition to showing you're confident in it, is to give some data. So data that people will care about, which Andy did. He said, we've done this in a small scale in the past, so here you go. Here's an example. We know we can make this work, and this is why. So you want to be sure you have that one specific thing clearly articulated that you want your audience to take action on. And maybe it is just a meeting, but you want to bring it into the broader picture. You don't want to ask something really big or think of ending hunger, something really daunting. How is that one person or those people you're talking to going to be able to address that after they hear you talk? You want to have the one thing, but you can connect it to the bigger picture. That might be why someone might care about it. So for example, Andy said you want to outscale what they've done that's been successful before in this one smaller location to all of Colombia, to the whole country, and for that we need your help. So then the audience can connect to that. Okay, it's been successful and you need my help, and this is a bigger level, but something that's actionable, something you can take action on. So that's point number 2, to know what you're asking for. And then number 3 is to put a story behind your facts, or think about the human angle of it. So when we're talking to someone, right, it's a person, no matter what their job role is or what they're doing day to day, or maybe they're someone really high profile, they're human. So you want to connect with the human angle. What about it are they going to care about? Not just because of their job, but because they're a human being. So where is the emotional connection with your message, or painting a picture that someone can relate to? Maybe some nice details to take them along on your journey, or something that makes the facts come alive to them and mean something more than just numbers. So spelling out why your listeners should care about this. So Andy did this by talking about profit and crop losses. So that's something the representative of the agriculture, of the farmers, would be interested in. I mean, profit and crop losses, that's a big deal. And then costs to public funds, that's something that a minister would be very interested in. In addition to anyone else in the room, citizens who are paying taxes want to be sure that their money is being as efficiently spent as possible. So he used numbers that people would care about to paint a picture that his audience could relate to, because he knew who was in the room. So there are other ways to do this, and you can get a little creative in this as long as it doesn't take away from your message. So for example, when I gave my pitch, I talked about, let me take you on a journey 50 years in the future. This farmer here in rural Tanzania has this situation, you know, they had to sell their cow to pay for school fees. But let me take you down another journey. If you've done X and you've implemented this, this is what it's going to look like. So thinking creatively about how to incorporate something that people might say, oh, wait, what are you talking about? I want to listen to this. Or however it makes sense based on your audience, as long as you don't lose the key message and you can still keep it short. So that's putting a story behind your facts and finding the human angle. And then the last thing is really more about soft skills. So the way that you communicate that's beyond the actual words that you're saying, so more about how you say it. So this is kind of what Andy was saying, when you want to be confident but not cocky. So you want to show that you're confident in your message and what you're saying. Your body language says a lot, especially when you're in a room with someone or talking face to face, how you're holding yourself, the way you walk into the room, making eye contact with the different audience members, if there are multiple people, where it makes sense, and in finding a way to engage them with the way that you're presenting the information you're presenting. And this can be as simple as the way you dress, the way you walk. It depends on the context. But you can think about this in your daily life too. Like Andy said, if you spend the weekend thinking about, well, how am I pitching daily, and how am I doing this in a way that's working or not working, and maybe even getting feedback from people. If you're confident in it, and you say, I really want pizza, it's going to be great, and oh, well, yeah, actually pizza sounds like a good idea, even just based on the way that you're talking about it. And then thinking about, well, if you know your audience, depending on them, you could, in addition to confidence, maybe flatter them a little bit. So this is kind of tricky, sort of like jokes can be a little tricky. You have to know your audience. But he said when he was talking, well, we want to continue the very positive collaboration we've had with you. So throwing in a little bit of flattery, like, it's been great, let's keep going. So depending on the circumstance and who it is, you can try to work in a little bit of that as well. And these are some of the sort of how you say things, how you approach your message. And these are things that are really hard to think about theoretically. You have to practice all 4 of these things, but especially these soft skills, the how you convey your message, which can make or break your pitch. If you're really looking not very confident, and you're not selling yourself. So this is a great thing to practice and get feedback on. So this is something that at the session in Lima, you'll have a lot of opportunity to get feedback on all of these, but especially these soft skills that are really important to do in person and to cultivate. Since we live in such a digital world, sometimes we're not thinking about how we're interacting when we're interacting in person. So it's quite important. And that's my basic deconstruction of Andy's pitch, along with the general, the 4 things I think are most important when pitching. And speaking of practice, maybe we can move into what we want to do next. So I'll let Abby take the floor.
Okay, so thanks, Juliet. That was a really great overview. So what I've done is I've pasted the 4 main tips that Juliet just spoke about into the chat box. So if everyone could just check the chat box right now, it's the icon on the right-hand side of your screen, at the top, there's a little chat icon, so hopefully everyone can see it. So Juliet's 4 tips are there. And what we'll ask everyone to do now is I've also pasted Andy's pitch into the chat box. And so we want to make this session as interactive as possible. So we'd like to offer the opportunity to 1 or 2 volunteers in the webinar to look at Andy's pitch again and to craft their own pitch, but for a different audience. So Andy's pitch was pitched to 2 people from the Ministry of Environment in Peru and 1 person from 1 private sector rice growing foundation. So what we're asking is if you can think of another potential audience for Andy's pitch, and we'd love to hear your version of that. So while people are thinking if they would like to volunteer for this, we're going to go ahead and answer the questions that have come up in the chat box so far. So the first question, or our only question right now, and I'd encourage others to ask questions in the chat box if you have them right now. So the first question is, with an elevator pitch, they say that it should be 20 to 30 seconds long. Would this be what we suggest as well? So I'm going to give a quick answer to that and then see if Juliet and Andy have answers. Yes, elevator pitches, realistically, they are 20 to 30 seconds. It would be a long elevator ride if it was a couple of minutes long or even more. So realistically, elevator pitches do have to be very short. But I think we have to think about how long we have and who we're talking to. So if you're not in an elevator, and let's say you're at a coffee break, or you want to make a comment in a session, or you've landed a meeting with an important minister and you have 30 minutes to convince them of your idea, you have to be able to gauge who your audience is and how much speaking time you have with them. So I'd say any idea that you have should be able to be explained fully in 2 minutes or less. And that's what we'll use at the Global Landscapes Forum. We're having 4 youth pitch to a panel, and we're giving everyone 2 minutes. I've tried it before with 4 minutes, and I get bored after 2. So that's my limit, and I'd be curious to hear what Andy and Juliet have to say.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it all depends on context, right? But I would say that you're never going to convince anyone of anything if you talk for more than 3 minutes. You know, because people just start kind of getting lost then. So you need a strong kind of, if you have a longer amount of time, what you need is a kind of 2-3 minute, get the idea across, and then start the dialogue. And most powerful people like to express their opinions too. So give them chance to then come back, ask questions, engage. But yeah, that first piece, the shorter the better, without risking being so short that they go off on a random tangent that is not where you want to go with it.
Yes, I would definitely agree. You have to be able to squeeze it into a small amount of space if that's the amount of space you have. And 2 minutes is definitely a good maximum target to reach, because you don't want to lose anyone. You don't want anyone to be bored. You still want people to say, oh, wait, well, I have a question about that. You know, to tell them everything, give some space. And like Andy said, listening. You know, want to give people an opportunity to say what they want to say too, and engage in that dialogue. And this may be an elevator pitch, for example, or something like it at the coffee break where you have 20, 30 seconds. Is a great way to get your foot in the door, maybe get a meeting or get a business card or whatever it is to keep the conversation going.
Great. So are there any other questions? There is a bit of a delay between typing and its appearance on the screen, so I'll give it a couple of more seconds. We do want a couple of people to re-pitch Andy's pitch. So, well, let's see. We have one more question, so I'll give the potential pitchers another minute to think of their responses. So the second question we have is, if you have a pitch with a lot of numbers, would you need a second pitch where you give the story with other aspects, since people sometimes get confused when you present numbers? Again, I'm going to draw upon feedback that was given in a prior session that we ran. If you think that you have too many numbers in your pitch and that people will get confused with them, leave them out. 1 or 2 numbers should do the trick. I don't recommend. I think numbers can be used strategically, but if there are too many numbers, it loses its effect. So I'd say 1 to 2 figures that are very important should be more than enough. I think you can see Andy's pitch is pasted above, and he uses a couple of numbers quite strategically, but it should be quite simple to understand by the average public. If it becomes complicated, it would be easy to lose track and lose the flow of your pitch. I'm going to let them answer as well.
I mean, something that I do is I always have like in my back pocket 3 or 4 follow-ups, right? So one could just be a story, so you play the human aspect, a story about somebody, a real life kind of case. Another one would be, the much more, the numbers. Put the business case down, so just talk in pure numbers. And another one could be anecdotal, kind of more lighthearted, and so, it's always, it's pitching is really all about thinking on your feet and not necessarily sticking to the script, but adapting to, as things are moving on. So then have your follow-up in your back pocket, but a few lines of inquiry for it.
Yes, I definitely agree. You don't want to stuff too many numbers in any one pitch. You don't have a lot of time either, so you don't want to be spitting out numbers all over the place and losing people. So it's good to maybe have a number, but it has to be strategic. You don't want to just put a number to put a number into your pitch. It has to be something that's meaningful to the audience and is going to make some kind of impact on them. And if it's something they'll remember, like, oh my goodness, $98 million a year, that might stick with someone. So thinking strategically about it is important. So if you think there's too many numbers and you know the topic, then there are probably too many numbers for someone who may not be as familiar with the topic.
Great. Okay, we have a few more questions coming in. This is great. I'd like to also see if there are any volunteers to repitch. So please comment here so that we know how much time we can allocate for that. So the next question is there a tip to pace yourself and keep track of time? How do you prepare a pitch and make sure it's within the time limit you want it to be in? I think I'm going to answer that at the same time as the second question right after it, which was how do you pitch something that you're not confident of? Sometimes you're conveying ideas that don't necessarily come from you and that are forced. So let's see, in terms of timing, I'd say it's always good to practice. I think people have different ways of practicing. I know Andy, I think, just wings it sometimes, and he's able to just talk, and I think when he feels like he's made his point, he might stop. I think some people are very good at gauging that. If I'm a little bit nervous about it, let's say I'm not pitching something that I'm confident about or that aren't my ideas, I would write it out. And I'd say if you get to half a page, that's more than long enough in terms of speaking points. And you might see that in action. If we don't have anyone volunteer right now, I've prepared 2 versions of Andy's pitch that I can give. And this is not my research, this is not my area of expertise, and this is absolutely something that I'm not confident about pitching to anyone. So I think you can see in action how that might work. I'd also just recommend if you're not confident about pitching something, don't pitch it. Or practice and make sure that you're convincing someone else before you do it in action. Andy, Juliet, do you want to answer?
Yeah, I mean, there is nothing worse than pitching an idea that you're not convinced of yourself. You'll never win that one. If you're not convinced of it, you can't sell it to someone else. So I just stay away from that. Focus, if you have to do it, focus on something you are comfortable with, and focus on what you can. I mean, I think people are very, very good at reading kind of people's thoughts and people's passions, and so you can see straight through someone who's not convinced of an idea themselves. So focus on something you are convinced of. That would be a very strong one. In terms of timing, always err on the side of you're probably going to talk too much, right? So in 98% of cases, people talk too much. Only in 1 or 2%, I would say the pitch is too short. So try and keep it, always be mindful that you're probably talking too much.
Yes, I would echo all of those things. Practice is really the key. If you're worried about timing, if you know you have a time limit, or if you're imposing one on yourself, then you want to try practicing. Time yourself. There's nothing like practicing. It really makes a big difference. And then if you're in a situation where you have to pitch something or speak for someone else, then practice and find the best way. Maybe you try one angle and it doesn't feel right as you're practicing it out loud, and try something else and maybe that feels a little bit better. So you want to find something you're as comfortable with as possible, and practicing is the best way to see if it actually works for you.
Great. Okay.
So there's a question from Rosario. If you like, I'll do that, and Abby, while you keep looking through the stuff. So what happens if you if during a coffee break you can convince one person with the pitch, and this person starts to ask a lot of questions, but the rest of people in the conversation get bored and start to leave? Well, it all depends who your audience is. If that person is your audience, doesn't matter everyone else is leaving. You've got your person, right? You've got their attention. If the other people are in your audience, then your pitch didn't work, right? Have you got to think it over, but in the next coffee break, try a different approach. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer. I think walking away is a good indication that perhaps something went wrong, and that's good. That's practice, and we're hoping to do some of that in Lima, and to provide some feedback on that now. Let's see, I'm going through a couple of the rest of them. Now, Brett made a point that pitching is about convincing someone else on something you want them to do. So it's all about focusing on their benefit. And I think that's a good point. I think Andy made that come out very clearly in his pitch, that he knew that what his research was doing was valuable, but he only highlighted what the benefits would be to the audience that he was speaking to. So he highlighted specifically the benefits to the ministry, to the ministry, and to the country, which is presumably what the ministry is interested in. So, I think that was really important, and something that we definitely need to think about. If you are not talking about the receiver of your pitch, so the audience of your pitch, if you're not talking about how they can benefit from what you're doing, it's pretty much guaranteed that they're going to lose interest in it. They need to see a benefit in what you're talking about. Let's see. Are there any toolkits or case studies online that we can use as examples preparing for our pitch? So these are some of the resources that we'll be providing online after the pitching webinar. I'm going to go ahead and put some of the blog posts we've written. Let's see if I can pull some of them up, and I'll put them in the chat box now, about some of the pitching work that we've done in the past. And if you Google on YouTube, if you look for practice pitches, usually there's a lot of business pitches that you see for startup companies. It's a common area that people pitch in, and you can find a lot of resources there. But we'll make sure to email everyone who's registered, assuming that we have your email addresses. If we don't, I will give you my email address at the end of this session. Please email me, and we can email you some of these resources.
And I can just compliment. You know where the best resource for pitching is I would start with your mum, and then go to your best friend. So I've always maintained that if you can't explain what you do to your mum, then go and find another job, right? So pitch to your mum, and someone who is not embedded, engrossed in all of this stuff, but just someone who's going to actually really listen to you, and actually try and help you. And so pitch to your mum. That would be the best resource I would do. See what she has to say about that, and it'll actually often give you confidence as well. And bat things off friends. So whenever I have something a little bit complex to deal with, in terms of what angle to take, or what would be the entry point to explain these things, I always just kind of talk it over with friends, with a group of kind of colleagues that, and it's normally I carpool in every day. So actually, my pitch that I did, I carpool tested it this morning. So that's a great way of also just do it with somebody and get some feedback, and they help you do it better.
Yes, it's great to test with someone who you know will give you some honest feedback, because if they don't find it interesting or confusing, especially if they're not in the same field, you want anyone to be able to understand what you're trying to say. So it's really, what is your message? What are you asking for? And then ask for feedback. Did you understand? Does it make sense? What would you suggest to whoever you're practice testing it with?
Great. I think we're going to take one more question. and then we're going to go ahead and do another repitch and then continue with questions so that people can see how we reframe pitches for different audiences. So let's see, I'm seeing, well, Lena is having problems seeing the screen, so I'm gonna message you, Lena, separately.
You do that, Abby, and look, there's a question here on to me. What do you do if you have to give a pitch in a document instead? So it's a lot more difficult because you can't engage. But you know, something that I think is very useful is the use of bold in documents, in emails, and things like that. When you're talking, you can use your face, you can use your expressions, you can use the pitch of your voice to focus on the most important thing. In a document, it's all just flat. So I mean, I wouldn't use, you know, nice big colors and flashing icons or anything, but bold is very useful, and just to say, you know, this is the key piece of this message. So that would be one thing. Again, I mean, pitching in documents, that's a whole different kind of ball game. I think there's different principles to that one, but you know, I think that's a great strategy. If someone, and then Gladys asks about how to deal with a group when one person interrupts you during your pitch and starts to ask questions or to raise an opposite point. What a nightmare. That's the worst thing that can happen, and it's horrible. And it's really uncomfortable often because, you know, if it's even worse if they're kind of doing that and other people are actually engaged, and you just want to kind of get that person to kind of shut up so you can still focus on the people that are interested. I mean, you've got to just keep with the flow. You've got to answer them politely and actually use it and turn it into an opportunity. So you turn that into an opportunity to show that you know your stuff. You know, so if they're questioning you, that's actually an opportunity for you to prove that this is not a bunch of rubbish that you're saying, but it is actually something that you know stuff about. So I would, you know, always see it as an opportunity. See any of these things as a means of furthering your point. But it's about thinking on your feet.
Great. Okay, so I'm playing with this webinars on. Oh, sorry, Juliet. Why don't you go ahead and respond?
Oh, no, that's fine. I was just going to follow up on what Andy said. I mean, if you have your facts and you have a way of saying, well, this is actually how I see it, and sort of showing your perspective has validity, it can actually even make your pitch stronger if you end up, I mean, sometimes it fails, it happens, but it could be actually end up being great for you. It's like, oh, well, I can tell you all about that. I can tell you why.
Okay. Great, let's see. So we still don't have any volunteers, so I'm going to go ahead and give a pitch unless anyone wants to volunteer last minute. I started a poll to see if how the polls on the webinars on air. This is all of our first time using webinars on air, so thank you very much for helping us with the with the first webinar here. And it looks like we have one vote, so I'm going to throw out the poll since that was not very successful with the 48 attendees we have now. So I have one pitch prepared from Andy's for donors and one pitch for policymakers. So I'm going to go ahead and give the pitch that I've prepared for donors as an audience. And then if we have time later or anyone's interested, I can either send you the pitch for policymakers or we might have time to do that again unless someone else is interested. So here we go. So the audience is donors, same case as Andy described before. So every year, 1,000 farmers in Colombia lose valuable crops due to climate variability. So let me tell you about Juan. Juan is a farmer in Cordoba. His family sold their last cow a few years ago due to the continuous crop failures from erratic rainfall. For the past 2 years, we've been working with Juan to prevent harvest loss. Through our work, Juan and 170 other farmers in Cordoba have saved $3.8 million of inputs, thanks to our work on climate forecasting. With your support, we've come this far, and we greatly thank you for it. But we're ready to work with the other 100,000 Colombian farmers who stand to benefit from increased food security and income from the scaling of our initiative. In 2015, we're asking for your support, for your continued support in Colombia's agricultural sector. With just $2 million, we can improve the livelihoods of 100,000 farmers just like Juan over the next 10 years. So I'm going to let others respond to that. If people want to comment in the comment section, please feel free, and then Andy and Juliet, go ahead and deconstruct.
If you like, I can go first. I mean, you know, so you've got a different audience, you've got a different type of ask, essentially. So you know, you've made that difference. You've also brought in the kind of the personal story. So we've got Juan now into the picture. So it's something kind of real, tangible, a story that has a kind of face to it, and we're all worrying about that last cow that Juan just sold. So it's now bringing in a kind of anecdotal story to it. So I think you know, it's a twist on the very kind of like business-like kind of economic piece that I was doing, and looking more from a donor interest in terms of livelihoods, well-being, and so on. So it's reading the different perspective, the different things that a donor is going to want compared to a Ministry of Agriculture, or etc. So that would be my deconstruct.
All right, I would say one thing that struck me is really just using all of the same material as Andy's pitch, but twisting it so the donor would be interested. And donors are interested in how many people, the number of people who will be impacted positively in what way. So that's the way Avi said, you know, 100,000 people, just like this one. So people can connect with one person easily in their story, and then think big and broad, and that's what donors want to do. How do they scale it out? And then the other thing I would say is, once again, the jargon. Are the donors going to know what that means and how this forecasting is going to help? So you might not have to say, because they might just ask that question. So it depends on the situation. They might say, oh, this is great, 100,000 people, farmers, tell me more about how this works. But they also might say, I have no idea what this technology does, it sounds confusing. So depending on your audience, you might want to throw in a short phrase about what it does and that you're the master of it, or whatever it may be.
Okay, great, thanks. Does anyone have any other questions they'd like to ask right now?
I want to be pitched at. Have we got any volunteers to do a pitch?
Practice makes perfect. No, practice is the way to do it.
Let's see, we're looking for a volunteer who can raise their hand.
Or type in the chat box that you're interested in pitching.
All right.
I think you know what? I think we got 43 attendees. I think they've all gone to the bank to give us the $2 million. You know, Abby.
That's a great result on our part. Or we had a lot of people walk away.
Or maybe they've gone off to eat pizza. I think that, you know, I convinced them that pizza is definitely what you want to eat tonight.
It was a convincing pitch.
Yeah, I mean, so you know, all that cheese, that melting cheese, delicious.
You've boost the economy of probably 43 different country pizza chains right now.
Yeah, we should do a post-webinar poll and see if how many people had pizza tonight.
We can do that in the poll section, actually. Okay, let's see. I have another pitch that I can give to policymakers, and I'm going to let people respond if they want to hear that on the poll, if this is an interesting exercise. Otherwise, we'd love to entertain a few last questions and hear from Juliet and Andy, maybe some wrap-up points for people to take with them, and then we'll make ourselves available online. And again, we would highly encourage anyone who feels inspired to come up with a last pitch for us. see. Maybe I can broaden this. If you'd like to give a pitch on a different topic, feel free to come in and give a pitch on a different topic. We don't need to limit it to Andy's agroclimatic forecasting, which, to be honest, I had to look up what agroclimatic forecasting means, and I work in the agricultural field.
Yes, use this as an opportunity. Maybe there's something you want to practice that you might need to pitch in the next couple days, or you did pitch and it didn't go well, trying something new.
Yes, Rosario, you can pitch about another topic. I see your question just came in. Yeah, please. We can add you in as a panelist.
Yeah, convince me to eat Chinese. I mean, anything, any topic, give it a go.
Mona, we'd much rather have you give it live. So just say the word go, and I'll add you in as a panelist, and you can actually give it verbally, which is definitely the type of pitching we're talking about here. Verbal pitching. So Mona or Rosario, can I add you in? All right, Mona or Rosario, we'll give you a second to say the word go for us, and maybe Andy can answer Beatrice's question.
Oof, that's a difficult one, Beatrice. Betty, that's a nasty one. Give me a sec. I mean, it's a difficult. You need to figure out what your audience is and what you want with that, Betty. So, how I will pitch. Wow, everyone's pitching now, so it keeps moving. I will pitch about how to get stakeholders to common action. Maybe we won't have numbers for it. How do you recommend doing a pitch like that? Well, you've got to figure out what's your ask, and who are you asking, and why. So you can have the best idea in the world, but it won't go anywhere unless there's the person you're pitching to is very clear about what they can do to make that a reality. So I would get that very clear, first of all.
And in addition, I would say, what's in it for them? So that's always the question you have to ask. What are you asking, and then how is it going to benefit them? So if you're trying to get collective action, then there has to be something beneficial in it for them, and ask, and what are they going to do about it?
Great.
So let's take Abby. Why don't we do 2 or 3? We've got a few now that want to do it. So let's do 2 or 3 in a row, and then we can discuss them.
Yeah, exactly. So there's about a 2-minute delay when we add a panelist in. So Rosario is on the way, somewhere in cyberspace, making it to the panel right now. I see a question from Christian that maybe you can answer while Rosario is being added. And Mona, I'm going to add you in as well just because of the time lag. So I'm going to start adding you in now. So hopefully Rosario shows up soon.
In the meantime, I'll just say something to Christian's question about who in the audience to focus on. The senior guy with decision power who maybe isn't open, or the junior who would love to hear more but won't decide anything. So you can always think about it as step by step, right? If you have access to the junior person, they're probably also whispering in the senior person's ear, or creating the memos, or helping them do the research on what they're going to present. So it's not useless to talk to the junior guy. I'd say if you can get access, go for it. It's always good to practice too, so it doesn't hurt. Try to pitch to them if you can, and then maybe that'll even get you in to be able to have a meeting or the access to the senior person who is actually making the decisions. So it's okay. I mean, it may be a great strategy because it's step by step, like Andy said in the beginning. It's maybe not the end goal at the first part of the pitch. It's what can you realistically expect out of it. So go to the junior person if you can get a meeting.
Yeah, I think that goes in line with Gladys's question on do you have to keep, what if your pitch doesn't sound natural? I think sometimes you can choose your audience and sometimes you can't. Sometimes you're just given an opportunity and you're sitting next to someone on the plane or you walk by your minister on the street and you realize you really wanted to talk to them, you just want to grab them and you have 30 seconds. So you should be comfortable enough to speak about it that it does sound natural, but also be flexible. This is why we're trying to do these exercises with giving pitches for different audiences. It might be you might talk about something different with the junior guy than with the senior guy with the decision-making power. So yeah, being flexible and making sure that you know your topic well enough to make it sound natural is really important. Quick disclaimer: we have lost Rosario and Mona to the cyberspace world. So I will try to add Rosario in again. It looks like she's reappeared on the side here. And Mona, I'm afraid we don't know where she is. So Rosario, if you're there, maybe you could type in the chat box and let us know.
Rule number 1 of pitching: make the pitch. That's is the old saying, right? The main reason why you don't get what you want is because you didn't ask, right? And so you always gotta make that ask.
Okay, we've got Mona on the call. Great. Hi, Mona. Thanks for joining us.
Rule number 1 of pitching: make the pitch.
No, I just need one more. Can you hear me?
Saying, right?
There's a bit of a delay on your screen right now.
One is because you didn't ask, right? And so you always gotta make that ask.
Oh, okay.
Mona, there's a bit of a delay on your screen, so you're hearing something that was said about a minute ago. Can you hear me all the time now?
Okay.
Great. Hi, Mona. Thanks for joining us.
Hi. Thank you.
Pitching. Make the pitch.
No, I just need one more. Can you hear me?
Saying, right?
There's a bit of a delay on your screen.
One is because you didn't ask, right? And so you always gotta.
Okay. Mona, if you can hear us, why don't you start talking? Mona, there is a bit of a delay on your screen, so you're hearing something that was said about a minute ago.
Okay.
Can you hear me all the time now? Oh, great. Hi, Mona. Thanks for joining us.
Hi. Thank you.
Pitching. Make the pitch.
No, I just need one more. Can you hear me?
Right?
There's a bit of a delay on your screen.
One is because you didn't ask, right? And so you always gotta.
Okay. Mona, if you can hear us, why don't you start talking?
Okay.
Mona, there is a bit of a delay on your screen, so you're hearing something that was said about a minute ago.
Okay.
Can you hear me all the time now? Oh, great. Hi, Mona. Thanks for joining us.
Hi.
Pitching. Make the pitch.
No, I just need one more.
There's a bit of a delay on your screen. Okay, this has been an interesting experiment. Thanks everyone for sticking through it with us. Hopefully Mona's made it back to real time, so let's unmute her. Mona, if you could unmute your microphone and just turn down the volume on your computer. Hmm.
I think maybe we should go for a plan B while we get that moving. I mean, there's a question here about kind of not sounding natural from Gladys. So, that's again, people are very good at seeing through things that you're either not convinced of or where you're reading from a script. there's nothing better than just talking kind of from the heart, right? Yeah, I would avoid trying to kind of over script a pitch. So in the end of the day, pass it, working it, write it down, practice and so on. But make sure that when you do it, you're not kind of just rereading something you've already got in your head, but yet just let it flow, just relax and let it go. I think that's very important.
Yeah, great. Definitely agreed. Let's see. Does anyone else have any other questions? I think we'll take 2 more questions, and then we'll have Mona give her pitch, and we'll do a quick wrap-up. So thanks, everyone, for sticking with us. I think it'll be a really interesting exercise to see what the audience has picked up from the webinar so far and is able to pitch. So whenever Mona is ready, we'll hear from her, and we'll take a few questions until then. So I see a question from Matilda. How would you pitch yourself? Meaning, how would you pitch yourself as a professional? Andy, do you want to take that?
So I suppose you mean there is kind of like almost as in a job interview, right? That's a more difficult question, right? I mean, I suppose I get to interview lots of people, and you always get the generic answers, right? And I always try and find questions that avoid getting the generic answers. Oh, I'm so dedicated. I'm so passionate. You hear all of these things all the time, right? So, as a professional, if you're going to kind of pitch yourself as a professional, take a different angle, than just saying what you are. Tell a story about something in the past that really excited you, that you did, where you feel you did a great job. Use real examples rather than generic concepts of who or what kind of a professional you are, because to be honest, everybody is always brilliant when they present themselves as professionals. And when you're on the other side interviewing someone, you're trying to find something, kind of something a little bit more than just the kind of the promises. You're trying to confirm that, and so you've got to provide that evidence when you're presenting yourself as a professional.
Yes, definitely. Examples are key because, for example, if you're at a job interview or trying to say, I want to lead this project, if you have examples and someone who might be interested in listening and doing what you're suggesting, say, oh, well, you have had experience doing this and this, instead of just saying, oh, I'm great at this. But then you say, I did this with this team of 7, and explaining a story of what happened and how you were involved is probably the best way to show that instead of just saying it.
Okay, great. So we're going to have a moment of silence so that the time lag on Mona's screen catches up. So I'm going to stop talking, and Mona, when you hear us stop, go ahead and give your pitch. So thanks, everyone. Juliet, can you unmute Mona? Mona, there's a few icons at the top of your video screen. If you just make sure that the microphone is not red, make sure that you see the microphone is white, you'll be able to join us. So Mona, we can't hear you right now. Oh, there you go. Now you're unmuted. Fantastic. Icons at the top of your video screen. If you just make sure that the microphone is not red, see the microphone is white, you'll be able to join us.
It's white. Can you hear me? Okay. Okay. All right. I'm gonna go for this. The pitch is actually, okay, you'll know what the pitch is once it's done. It's actually something related to our discussion. Okay, this is something I jotted
Mona,
very fast.
we can't hear you right now. Oh, there you go. Now you're unmuted. Fantastic. At the top of your video screen, if you just make sure that the microphone is not red.
Okay, okay. I'm gonna keep going. All right.
It's white. Can you hear me?
Okay. We are over 40 people here gathered to discuss brilliant ideas on. Oh, sorry, I can hear my own voice. Hold on, sorry.
Actually, okay,
it's confusing me.
It's actually something related to our discussion.
Okay. We are over 40 people here gathered today to discuss brilliant ideas on how to do a great pitch. We've got experts and experienced pitchers who are trying to guide us through how to do a pitch and convince a panel of key stakeholders to take up our ideas and recommendations further. We are all connected by the same vision on how to advance action on landscapes management so that we, whatever. So what better platform than right here and right now for practicing our pitch so that we can be effective and actually communicate great ideas to a panel of strong people who can help us further. So come on, who's next to try this?
For ideas and recommendations.
A pitch to pitch.
You're all connected by
that's great.
on how to advance action on that.
That was great. Mona, sorry, I muted you again because for some reason your computer is still talking about a couple minutes ago. But that was good. I hope that the pitch worked. Let's see if we got any more people to start pitching.
But I mean, on the positive, so there, you know, Mona was giving a sense of kind of excitement around this, you know. So you know, lots of people, we're all kind of with the same vision, you know. I think that positivity engages you, it gets you listening, right? And then the pitch to pitch. So now let's see if it works.
Okay, great. Let's see. We have Rosario on. So Mona, I'm gonna actually take you out for a second, so you'll be back in the chat box, and you'll be able to continue chatting with us, so that Rosario can give her pitch. So let me work on doing that. Rosario, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yeah, perfectly. Yes. Great.
Okay. At this, the program, I think, is asking me something.
Don't
Let
worry
me
about
see
it.
it for a second.
We're just sending chat messages to you.
Oh,
if you're ready for your
oh,
pitch,
okay.
go.
Okay. Now I can see you. Yeah.
So I think we're ready for you if you're ready to give your pitch.
Hello? I'm right here. Sorry, it's just I am my house with my little doggy that is getting a little bit crazy. But I'm sorry. Okay. I was going to talk about my work survey. I mean, it's a project we have been working, but I think I want to practice a pitch in order to try to involve more organizations and people with this initiative from UN. So how many minutes do I have? Just one or? Yep. Hello?
2 minutes. 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
Sorry about the inconvenience. Well, um, I'm a little bit nervous. Well, I'm gonna start. My word is a survey that is being promoted by UN since 2012 and is involving now more than 5 million people in order to engage them in the creation process of the post-2015 development agenda. All people around the world is getting their say at United Nations. So what is the thing? We want to involve more people. We want to involve at least 1 million of people. Not, yeah, oh, sorry. 10,000 million people in this initiative. And that's why we believe that it's important for all the organizations to join us, to try to involve their communities and their priorities in this creation process. How can we do this? We can do it in different ways. We can work with workshops. We can do it physically, online. The important thing is that our communities start taking action and start believing in they can be part of a process that can involve the development of their communities in the future. Oh, I think that was it. I don't know. Thank you.
Thanks, Rosario. So, okay, so my question to you would be, what do I get from this, right? So you pitch to us essentially something that's very good for you. If we take part, we give you more numbers, you get a better result. What's in it for me?
That you can get involved into that your voice can be heard into the next development agenda, that your priorities will be considered as the other people's priorities.
So that's what I would say you've got to focus on much more with that pitch. So you 80% of the pitch was about what you're doing and why. And the message to me that the message is that you should pick out in your audience you know that I work on climate change, so you should say I know that you work on climate change, and I know that you're very passionate about agroclimatic forecasts, whatever they are. So you should take part in this and get those on the map so that you get your $2 million. So think about who you're talking to and specify the message for them so that they see the benefit. In the end of the day, we're all very selfish, all right? And so we're not going to do something, that involves a lot of work just to help you. We've also got to see the selfish benefit from it, right? So that's the thing you should focus on, is how do you draw people in so that they see the benefit.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, we are trying to work this project and try to make it bigger, try to get more participation, but sometimes it's pretty hard to make other people understand that as it's important for us, it can be important for them. Yeah, so thank you for your suggestion. I think it's very important what you said about focusing in the people who's listening to you, so you can get a better chance to make it happen. Okay, thank you.
Juliet, do you want to give a couple seconds of feedback?
Sure. Thank you, Rosario. I would say yes, definitely make sure what are people going to get out of joining. And then I think in addition to that, once you've picked out those reasons why, do you want your voice to be heard about X, Y, or Z issue? This is how, and then maybe also including some simple way to do that. You said there are many options. So if you said you can go online right now and do this, enter it into this form, or whatever it is, something very easy that people could do immediately to get involved might also help.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, just one quick thing that I noticed. I was a little bit confused as to who exactly you were talking to. I didn't know if perhaps you were talking to a room full of organizations that you were trying to work with, or if you were talking to maybe one organization specifically. I think it must have been to potentially a room full of organizations, since it wasn't very specific. But I'd think about how you would tailor it if you had maybe just one of those people sitting in front of you, or a group of people from one organization, how you would be very specific in what the exact benefits are. Not maybe that just their suggestions could be heard, but maybe pick out a few of the exact suggestions that you know they're interested in, and talk a little bit about how your platform will be a useful space for that. So I had a bit of a question on the audience, and I agree with Andy and Juliet. So let's see if there are any last people who would like to pitch. Beatrice, did you want to do one?
Yeah. Hi. Is sound okay with everybody?
Yes. Fantastic.
Okay, great. I had very little time to think about this, but can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I had little time to think about it. So I'm going to talk to you about a platform that I've seen in Mexico for. Okay, I'm gonna think that everyone in the presenters, like Andy, are decision makers from Colombia, and that I want to convince them of taking an approach that we have in Mexico for decision making and landscape and stakeholders integration. So, okay, let me start. Let me tell you about a town in western Mexico called Ayutla. In this town, there are many stakeholders sharing a watershed. In these stakeholders are farmers, the town, and a company that bottles water. This company has the luck to be at the top of the watershed, and it's taking most of the water, but then this is affecting farmers down in the watershed that are not getting enough water for their crops and losing the yields. So these stakeholders found that they needed to get together and discuss what's the problem with this water distribution, and then it came up with a platform called a platform for municipal decision making and allocating water uses so that everybody gets access to it. Now this watershed, this municipal platform is very successful and is used in Mexico. Is promoted in Mexico for further decision making in the red pilot projects, and it's being helpful to ensure also that there's no more deforestation risks, and being used for other problems. So I want you government officials in Colombia to consider this option as something that you could apply in your country for many different land use problems, such as agriculture. And if you'd like, I'd be very happy to talk more about it and to see how we could come up with a scheme or a project or a plan on how we could implement this on your in your own country situation.
Okay, thanks, Beatrice.
Yep.
Okay, so I'll give my perspectives, and maybe Juliet can complement. Or do you want to go first, Juliet? I've been going first on all of these. You get the first starter advantage.
All right, sure. I'll go first. So thank you very much, Beatrice. I would say one of my questions is I see it's a framework at the municipal level, but I wasn't exactly sure what it consisted of. So maybe, I know you didn't have a lot of time to prepare, but maybe a specific example. You mentioned upstream and downstream and water use as an example, but then mentioned deforestation. So I was a little bit confused. But the ask was generally clear. You're asking for them to consider this new approach, this framework. Maybe clarifying that a little bit too in this section, or it depends on who's in the room, who the decision makers are. Maybe it makes sense. Consider this in your framework because this policy is on the table right now. So maybe clarifying that and a little bit more about what it is. I was a little confused.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so I have attention deficit disorder, right? And so after about 40 seconds, my attention level went down while that was like a scientific abstract of a project.
Okay.
So you've got to keep a storyline rather than just a description of the scheme. Talk about weaving us kind of a storyline, right? So you know, I would strengthen the storyline, and again, it was kind of what you had is a kind of summary of the project and then a pitch for Colombia. You also need to weave those two things in together. It's always useful to capture the attention of the audience. Start with the selfish benefit, right? So start by telling me why I should be interested. Because otherwise I'm having to go through this, kind of keep the concentration going on the summary, and really concentrate to figure out why is this interesting for me. If you start out straight up, why I should be paying attention, then you know, then that makes it easier. So you could start out by saying, you know, in Colombia you have 180,000 hectares of deforestation per year, or 30 million people in Colombia are using excess water, or something like that, right? So start it out with why is it relevant for me, and then you've got the attention.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Beatriz. Great job. Let's see, we have Suzanne now on the line. I believe Suzanne will be our last pitcher for today. So, so thanks again, Beatriz. Great job. We're going to take you off the panel, and Suzanne, you can start pitching whenever you hear this.
Okay. Can you hear me on that side?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm working for SNV, the Netherlands Development Organization, and I'm just, I was based in DRC. I'm now actually in the Netherlands, but there I worked on a palm oil project with smallholder farmers, and we are rehabilitating the old palm oil plantations, and we are giving them trainings about how they can increase their yields. This is all the introduction, actually. So we are teaching them how they can increase their yields, but now we also want to give them trainings about environmental awareness raising. And for that, we think it's quite difficult to convince some of those of the farmers to attend these trainings. So I would like to pitch a story to those palm oil farmers, those smallholder farmers, why they should attend the trainings that we would like to give them. So actually, this is where it starts. Yeah, we came here last year, where we teach you all about practices that you can do in your plantations to increase the yields of palm oil production. And you saw by yourself that increased the production by more than 50%. Now we are here again, but this time we developed some other training materials that's about which practices you can do that are sustainable for the environment and which practices are unsustainable. Because as you know, like the forest near your village that rapidly decreased, and all the chimpanzees that are living there and bonobos, they're almost gone extinct. You know by yourself, you have to go further away to hunt animals, but also to search your medicines and to search other non-timber forest products. So what we would like you to offer now is another course about which practices you can implement and how you have to implement that. And so that's also in the future you will still have that forest around you, and you can make use of all the services that the forest give you.
Great. Thanks, Suzanne. That was great.
Okay, thank you.
Do you want to go first again, Juliet, or me?
Sure, I'll go. All right, thanks, Suzanne. I I would say you started out, you captured sort of what we've been talking about by starting out about what's been beneficial for the farmers before. You were here before, and what you trained them with before was useful. They could see it with their own eyes. So I think that was a good way of approaching it. Although I might flip the benefit and say, we're here now because we want you to be able to not have to go as far to hunt, be able to access more of your forest products, whatever it is that's going to benefit the farmers themselves. So that might be the first thing you say. And then you could remind them that last time you were here, it was also beneficial if you throw that piece in. But like Andy was saying before, starting out with why is this beneficial to them? Why should they come? Why should they be interested? Is the first part. Because then my question while you were speaking was, okay, sustainable for the environment. Why would the farmer care in their daily life? I mean, generally farmers would, but you want to show them why, the direct linkage. So if you start out with the benefit for them, then that definitely comes in. Okay, but great job, thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, likewise, I think again, you start with that playing to the selfish need, right? So, a different formula that you could use is actually just ask a question to the audience, and that keeps them on their toes. So, you know it best, but you could say, are you all you're all suffering with pests and diseases in your palm oil plantations, right? And then you've engaged with them, and they're gonna, a few of them will nod, maybe a few of them will go kind of look at you strange, but you're getting their attention, especially if you know exactly what are their problems right now. So ask it, get the engagement, have them kind of all nodding and listening, and then sell them what, say, hey, we can help you on that, and this is how. So that would be an interesting way. It's with farmers, it's always useful to ask questions, because then that gets them engaged.
Okay, that's a good advice. Yeah. Thank you both.
Yes. Suzanne, thanks. One comment I want to highlight from the audience is from Matilda. She said, you should probably say, now you can learn, instead of we will teach you. And I have to agree with that. I think it's important to make sure that you're not necessarily imposing a solution on the community. And I think one way to do that would be to do what Andy is saying, is to ask a question, is this a problem that you're experiencing, or what problems are you experiencing, and allow farmers to bring that information to you so that you can then say, oh, and we have this solution that we think can address this. I also wanted to make a quick comment on jargon. I know that in the agriculture and environmental development world, we love the word services, environmental services, forest services, and I'm sure you're well aware of this, but something just to highlight is that farmers sometimes don't really care about what the word environmental services means, or ecosystem services or forest services. And sometimes, I really liked what you said is there are some species here that have become extinct. And so maybe what you could highlight is how many people here rely on this species for food. How many of you have noticed that it's harder to find them? And then, maybe talk a little bit about how deforestation has perhaps hindered the ability of that species to survive in this area. And I guess sometimes what I find is that a lot of the times farmers kind of know these things, but they're not really aware of the solution. So I do think it's great that you're going to them and not just asking these questions, but saying, okay, this is our solution, and this is exactly why you should be interested in our solution. Let's see, I'm just looking to see if there are any more suggestions from our audience here. No. Okay, do you want to respond, or are there any other last-minute comments on this one?
No, thank you. I only want to ask one more from Juliet. You said you would twist the beginning around. Is it correct, if I understood that? That you would start with, not with like last time we came here to teach you these things about palm oil, and that was in my eyes more like the introduction to them, but you would say first like I'm coming here to teach you about the environmental awareness training.
Yes, I think that because it gives them right away, well, this time it's going to be something different, and this is what they're going to get out of it. Yeah. But you can incorporate last time it was successful, too, if that's how people felt in the community. Oh, they're back again to teach us something new. You say, oh, it was successful last time, but I would start out with this time. This is what you're going to get now.
Yeah. Okay, thank you all. Yeah, very useful comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, great. So I believe this concludes the interactive session of our webinar. It's now 5:35 here in Addis at night, and I know the morning has started back in Lima. So I'm going to hand over to Juliet and Andy to make a few last-minute comments. Please feel free to continue the questions flowing in the chat box. I'm going to leave my email address there since we realize we don't have access to your email addresses when you sign up for the webinar. So feel free to shoot me an email if you want any of the follow-up materials. And I'll also put a link in the box where you can sign up to receive our newsletters through the Global Landscapes Forum. So thanks again, and over to Juliet and Andy.
All right, thanks everyone for all of your participation and jumping in. We got a lot of momentum. I hate to cut it off, but I hope it looks like it's been useful, and practice, practice, practice is basically my main message. And yes, I know there'll be lots of practice at the session in Lima. And then, like Andy said, practice. See if you can pitch to your mom about whatever the project is that you're going to be working on.
Okay, yeah, and I'd say, you know, this is the first time I've actually thought and analyzed the pitching. I was kind of self-taught on all of this stuff, but my message is audience, audience, audience. I mean, you know, the key is just understanding what is driving the person on the other side, what is going to get their attention, and just focusing on that. You know, I think I would say that, you know, that's 70–80% of success is just hitting that note. You know, so and then all the other things is confidence, using anecdotes, names, numbers, etc. Sure, but I just get the audience right, and you're away. So it's a lot about being kind of analytical about who you're talking to and what drives them, what gets them up in the morning. So and just to reiterate, I think this has been fantastic. So thanks to everyone for your really active participation, and congratulations to all of those who took the deep dive and did a pitch. I mean, I'm sure that was very daunting and scary, but you're the heroes of the webinar. Well done.
So thanks, everyone. I see the chat box still going, so keep it up for the next few minutes. And I put in the link for the Landscapes newsletter that we will send out the video recording of this session to. And if for some reason you're unable to sign up there, I've also included my email address. I'll put it again since it keeps scrolling up. I can connect you with the other panelists as well. So thanks again.